or you can use a Post-it and put it on the posters. Sorry, no, I'm sorry. Seems like heavy. I was just going to say, comfortable. Yeah. So welcome. We are from North Syracuse, and our topic for this issue analysis is response to intervention, otherwise known as RTI. I'd like to start out with introducing ourselves. I'm Kelly Flaherty. I'm a reading teacher at Roxborough Road Middle School.
And I'm Sarah Keys. I'm a special ed teacher at CNS High School.
I'm Karen Bellum. I teach ELA 8 at the junior high school.
I'm Melissa Cisco. I teach ELA AIS at the junior high school.
I'm Sue Straub. I teach 5th grade at Roxborough.
I'm Michelle Costello. I teach reading at Roxborough Middle School.
So our first issue analysis was to look at creative ways to embed collaboration time into our schedules, K through 12. Of course, we were given some pretty strict parameters, such as there would be no new money, there would be no new staff, and no new busing. For this issue analysis, we were asked to research effective models of RTI across all grade levels and to come up with recommendations for implementation. We were also tasked with uncovering what is currently the protocol for RTI across all grade levels throughout our district. And so, our purpose for this issue analysis is to consider the following question. Are we meeting the needs of all students in every classroom, at every grade level, in every building, throughout our district? We did some research within our district regarding our elementary schools that showed us that RTI is beginning to be implemented, and we will share what we found in a few moments. However, we were not sure if our colleagues at the secondary level, which in our district is 5th through 12th grade, were aware of what RTI is. These are some of their responses. So that we could get honest answers, we offered them some anonymity.
RTI response to intervention. It means really what we have to do is try to help a kid in need. Like, what are we doing to help this child who's not succeeding in the classroom?
I agree with that. So we do stuff to help them, whether it's small group, whether it's individual, whether it's pairing them with a friend.
RTI is one of the first steps to help get kids help they
that
need.
students may have academically, and responding to that by addressing it within the classroom or outside the classroom.
RTI is a process that will help teachers and mainly our students get the intervention help that they need from our wonderful AIS math and reading teachers.
RTI is figuring out where a student is and doing what you need to move them forward from that point.
I'm not positive, but I think it's something with reading intervention, but I'm not sure.
I believe RTI stands for response to intervention. Beyond that, I really don't know what.
There are 3 tiers, and students get an opportunity to get their instruction tailored to meet their needs and see if they're responding to any interventions that they're receiving.
Racing to Indiana.
My definition of RTI is that it's a process to be able to help differentiate support for kids, and it includes a team approach, and that team gets together and kind of works through things, shares ideas, looks at some data, thinks about family dynamics, school history, and they develop a plan, but that plan is kind of flexible and changes over time.
RTI is response to intervention, and it is a system wherein every student is getting the support
intervention that they need to be challenged and achieving at their highest possible level.
RTI is Railroad Transportation Indigo. And that's where, back in the day, when we had railroads and we would be transported, we used to wear indigo.
From RTI, research to intervention. I think a lot of it is a way for a school district to try to create a program that can support kids to the best of their ability.
So like Kelly said, at our elementary levels, RTI is in place at all buildings. Each of us, there are 6 of us, and we have 6 elementary buildings. So each one of us went and interviewed the building principal, the AIS interventionists, and classroom teachers. And we created this chart just to see what the current state is at the elementary level. I would just like to highlight 2 things. Cicero Elementary is the farthest along in the process. This was a grassroots effort started by teachers and supported by administration. They hold daily or weekly, not daily, that would be great, weekly data meetings, and there are PLCs functioning at K through 4 at all levels. The second school I wanted to highlight was Lakeshore Road. Lakeshore Road was honored last year by the New York State Ed Department due to their growth with their grades 3 and 4 testing. And the great thing about Lakeshore is they put a visual. They use something called a data wall. Every student is on a little slip of paper and they post it so that when they benchmark their kids, they physically and visually move those kids so that staff members can see where this kid was and where they are now and what kids are not moving. Although RTI is in place at all of the elementary levels, we did discover, as you could see from our previous slide, that it's inconsistent and it has a different look at every building. At the secondary level, we interviewed far more colleagues than you saw on our short video clip, and what we discovered at the 5 through 12 level is there are few to no PLCs happening in our buildings, and there's little to no discussion happening around the context of data. This is a close reading strategy. Some of you may know the book Notice and Note, which is by Kylie Daris and Robert Probst. It's a close reading strategy for fiction, and this year they have the nonfiction book coming out that'll be published in the fall. Kelly and I had a chance to spend the weekend at Teachers College 2 weeks ago, and we got a chance to meet Kylie, and she flashed this for us and said, here it is. So of course we got our phones out and took pictures. But this is a close reading strategy that you can use within your classroom for nonfiction text. And so we asked you to interact with the piece of literature that we gave you, the why behind RTI that we had sent out. And the 3 things that they asked for focused close reading of nonfiction text is asking students, which you are our students, what surprised you, what did the author assume you already knew, and what changed or confirmed your beliefs of what you found from the article. So we'd like you to take a moment, we know that it's a small group, but we'd like you to take a moment at your tables just to discuss what surprised you from that article. There are articles on your table, so you can quickly scan it and find something that surprised you. If you didn't have a chance to read ahead of time.
Essentially, when I come into the event, that isn't necessarily surprising, but it's always alarming to see the actual statistics of kids identified that are privileged or white commented on. How they stay identified, how very rarely do you see children identified as getting unidentified. And then, nothing was surprising. RTI is really in place and people are talking about it, but it's a different story going on at the secondary levels, just like we found in our district. And that there's really a lot that needs to be done in terms of RTI and PLCs at our secondary levels.
I got a great comment about the idea that RTI is for special ed, not necessarily for the general ed, so that's a great thing to keep in mind as we move forward also.
The website that we asked you to respond to electronically is called todaysmeet.com, and it's another useful web-based tool for teachers to bring classroom or technology within to the classroom. It's simple to set up and user-friendly, and you can obviously see our responses immediately, instantly, and we also were happy that Beyonce chose to participate in our process.
Yeah.
We're not sure who Beyonce is, but we were happy to see her participate. So we encourage you to take a closer look at this Today's Meet website if you didn't get a chance to use it yet, to utilize it. And you can look at the responses, they're already up there, so you can take an in-depth look. You can also browse around the room to see the post-its that are up, and it'll give you an idea of what some of our colleagues are thinking about the process of RTI, and it might evoke some dinner conversations this evening also. There are some common surprises and confirmations. We noticed it in the room. We also noticed it when we looked at the website. And what was surprising to our group was the right versus wrong questions. And we found this extremely powerful because it focused our attention to looking at the needs of students versus the implementation of an RTI program. So sometimes schools get so caught up in creating an RTI process on paper, we forget what the underlying purpose is. And that's to meet the needs of all students in every classroom every single day. So hopefully throughout this presentation, it will help clarify some of the misconceptions and the concerns that some of you have. We also had some questions, so we reached out to Chris Kleibeck right here at BOCES, and here are some things he had to say.
Chris is the expert, one of the experts at BOCES on RTI. He is actually one of the district data coordinators. And he sat down with us and tried to help us outline what our focus should be. He asked us, what is the functional purpose at your school? He quoted Richard DeVore by saying, the fundamental process of school is learning, not teaching. Therefore, we should be focusing the majority of our resources on Tier 1 instruction, making sure that we are differentiating instruction, using data to guide our instruction, and collaborating on teams to create a viable curriculum for all using common assessment. Excuse me. And here is a quick peek at what Chris had to say.
So for us, RTI is really an umbrella that covers all instructional decisions in a district. That it really is about providing support to every student, K-12, in making sure that we have the right pieces in place to make the best decisions for those students, and we have the structures in place to support teachers and other staff members who are really working with those students. So instead of RTI being seen as something that's K-4, or something that's simply for those kids that struggle in our grade levels or in our buildings, it's really about what does every kid need. And I think a key starting place for that is really a focus on what every student is receiving. You know, whether it's a kindergarten student, a 4th grader, an 8th grader, what is the level of Tier 1 support that all kids are getting. So I often ask a district, you know, as we think about Tier 1, you know, we're really looking at a guaranteed viable curriculum. What can we really, you know, guarantee that every student is receiving as a 4th grader? You know, what is that core instruction? And I think that's sort of the keystone to a successful RTI program and RTI plan, is that you have those conversations about Tier 1. Often I think those conversations are not had as directly when talking about RTI. When we jump to Tier 2 and Tier 3, to only find out that there are really some things at Tier 1 that can be improved, that will be helping you know, not only the students who struggle, but you know, the students who are average, above average performers, you know, when it comes to, specifically in most cases, reading and math, or ELA and math. Another piece that's key in talking about RTI, beyond just what's happening in the classroom, but what are the structures and processes that are in place to support the level of work that you hope is happening at each grade level in each building? And what I mean by structures and processes are there opportunities provided for teachers to get together to collaborate around assessments, to collaborate around data, and have conversations that hopefully are moving from those assessments and data to really think about students and instruction, because that's really the main purpose as we think about supporting kids.
With all of that in mind, we have come to the understanding that RTI is the umbrella philosophy for all the powerful things that are going on in our buildings. Through staff development and PLCs in all the buildings and at all levels, student needs can be met under this umbrella policy.
So looking at RTI and hearing from Chris and doing our research, the 4 C's of RTI kept popping up, and this really kind of drove everything home and brought it all together and made sense to us. And when you look at Tier 1, which is the instruction that all students are getting, these are the things that we really have to focus on when we're doing that. The first C of the 4 C's is collective responsibility. This is the idea that it is the primary responsibility for every teacher in every building to ensure that high levels of learning are being met for all students. And the guiding question here is, why are we here? What is our purpose? Well, we're here to teach the students. The second question, or the second C of our 4 C's, is concentrated instruction. And the process here is to identify the essential curriculum and the need to knows. There's a lot of things that we want to teach, but we really have to start focusing on those essentials and what students need to know in order to reach those high levels. And our guiding question here is, where do we need to go? The next C is convergent assessment. And this is the belief that we need to analyze data. We need to sit down in teams and look at data and look at assessments and really analyze this and determine specific needs for each student. And so the guided question here is, where do we need to go? And then the final C is certain access. This is the idea that every student is guaranteed that they will receive the time and the support that they need to either give them remediation or to enrich their instruction. And our guided question here is, how do we get every student there? And so we are lucky enough to have the STLE grant in our district, Strengthening Teacher Leadership Effectiveness. And one of our buckets of the STLE is currently working on RTI. And so we reached out to them because they've already done some work here. So we did reach out to them and ask them to kind of educate us and where they're going with RTI. And they sent us some slides, which you're going to see in the next couple of slides, to show us what their ideas are. Here you'll see this is your typical RTI pyramid, but it is inverted. And so you see instead of Tier 1 being on the bottom, which if you Google, that's where you normally see it, at the bottom, they put it at the top because they see this is the overlying foundation for all students, that they get that Tier 1 core instruction. And then they move to Tier 2 with supplemental programs, in Tier 3, which are your intensive instruction for individual students. Sarah's going to dive a little bit deeper into each of these.
So Tier 1 is where all your core instruction for all the students in the building will receive. This should be quality, valuable curriculum that's research-based and aligned around common assessments. And all instruction needs to be differentiated to meet the needs of all students. The research says that Tier 1 instruction should meet the needs of 80 to 90% of the student population. And if you have more than 20% of your students needing additional interventions, then you have a Tier 1 problem. So we're talking about a valuable curriculum for all students, thus rethinking the pyramid means differentiating instruction to meet the needs of all students and not just focusing on those kids that will fall behind. So all students will receive core instruction and they'll be pulled out for Tier 2 or Tier 3 as necessary. this tier is based on common assessments, such that students who are not meeting the grade level benchmarks, those benchmarks are developed by our individual teams. And for whom tier 1 instruction is not enough, students will receive tier 2 interventions. They'll receive the same instruction as tier 1, and in addition, receive targeted interventions, which are provided by the classroom teacher or staff as necessary as it works in your schedule. Again, this should be no more than 5 to 10% of your student population. And then they sent us with a slide their analogy. I really like this analogy to help you remember tier 2. They use, for example, your child has an earache, but if he gets proper short-term treatment, like through a quick antibiotic, then he gets better. But if left untreated, the earache can become worse or lead to other problems. And then tier 3 is where the students that demonstrate significantly weak skills across multiple disciplines will receive intensive, small group, and frequent instruction provided by the specialist of the targeted area that we want to move that kid towards and improve it. Again, another great analogy is your child has a condition that needs intensive care because he's hemorrhaging, so then that child will need intensive support and help so that he doesn't bleed out. And then you're going to tell them about our Phoenix trip?
Sure. So this is Phoenix, Arizona, and Sarah and I and 14 of our colleagues had an amazing opportunity this March to travel to Phoenix and to attend a PLC summit provided by Solution Tree. And now this group is currently working on establishing protocol to facilitate establishing PLCs within our district. So Mike Mattis was one of the keynote speakers, and he specializes in PLCs, and he is also one of the co-founders for RIT at Work. He works a lot with middle school and secondary schools also, so not just within the elementary, so it was useful for us as we go further in our district also. He's amazing. We highly recommend anybody that can attend a session of his to go. We spoke with some Liverpool people earlier that were at a previous conference in fall with him that we were also at. And we're kind of becoming some Mike Mattis groupies here. When we went to the hotel room, saw him in the lobby, we couldn't resist, getting that picture with him.
I think I was blushing.
So he just has a way of everything he says just makes sense. So here's some of the things that he does say that when you hear him speak make complete sense. He opened his presentation with this question. If we collectively commit to each other and publicly profess that our mission is to ensure that all students learn at high levels, then don't we have an obligation to align our actions to this outcome? He followed up this question by pointing out that teachers aren't superheroes and that one person cannot reach the needs of every single student and every single skill all the time. We need to utilize each other. We need to be professionals and collaborate together. He emphasizes the structure of Tier 1 as being that guaranteed viable curriculum for every student. And he also emphasizes that in order to attain this level of collaboration, we need to establish professional learning communities. So let's look closely more at now PLCs.
So as we were doing our research, we decided that PLC, or professional learning community, we see that a lot in education. It gets thrown out there a lot, and it becomes an acronym that maybe becomes an umbrella that kind of covers everything. So we reached out again to that group of teachers that is dedicated to bringing RTI to our district and said, what research have you already done? Because we feel that we need some type of definition, that this is what a PLC is and this is what it is not. This is their research-based, ongoing definition, and they have said that it's an ongoing thing that they've added to, but what we want to point out is what it's not. So when we say a PLC, if you're having a book club, that's not a PLC. That's not how our district is choosing to define what a PLC is. But instead, it's an ongoing, embedded process that happens within our school day. It's constantly reaching for the best of what we can do to provide kids so that they can learn to their highest potential. And that it's also simultaneously groups working simultaneously and collaboratively for the best interests of the kid. I and you can see that student success is the center of all of those things. In our last issue analysis, we had a chance to visit Thomas High School in Webster, New York, and we went there specifically to look at how they have embedded collaboration time within their schedule, but what we also saw was functioning, efficient, high-quality PLCs at work. And so we had taken meticulous notes, which really helped us with this issue analysis, because we had already had some of that work and that conversation with them. We saw them using data-driven instruction. We saw them meeting together and creating things for the good of their students. And we also saw them being very transparent, that any teacher in that building had access to any other student, so that in the hallway, and in the lunchroom, and in study hall, and within their core classes, everybody has that all-in mentality of that culture, that these are our kids, and what can we do to get our kids, achieving at the highest level.
We also had the opportunity to visit local schools within our area, and some of the common themes kept popping up over and over again, and they were the same things that we got to see when we were in Webster. Some of those are built-in collaboration time into the schedule, data-driven, that we need to have our data or our assessments, common assessments, and then drive our instruction based on that, and use flexible grouping so kids can move throughout the tiers. That everything is student-centered. RTI is built right into the school schedule. That we have leadership teams set up in place, and that they are able to turnkey train their teams in whatever they need. Special area teachers are included. That means that they're included in the data discussions, they're included in the planning, and they're included in the teaching. One of the most important things that they talked about was establishing norms for their meetings right away and really sticking to those norms. And the most important part was that the whole school culture changed and that they really switched to an all-in mentality. We had the opportunity to visit Sewell Road Elementary, and we really saw this in place. Here you see some pictures of a second grade team that was meeting here. And they were great. They were so, there was such a nice feeling of comfort, and they felt safe. And we talked to them a lot about their process and when they started. And they said it was not easy to begin. And the first year they did it, there were a lot of bumps in the road. They had a lot of naysayers, a lot of teachers who just didn't think it was going to work. But over the years, I think they said they're in their third or fourth year now, it really has made a huge difference. They meet every Wednesday. They call it We Wednesdays. The teachers go in 15 minutes early, and they stay, they're able to leave the building 15 minutes early at the end of the day. And they get a half an hour of uninterrupted time before students arrive to the building. So that's when they sit and they plan their assessments and they talk about their data. They have team leaders who are trained, and those team leaders lead the discussions in their norms and in their data. And their culture, which I think was the most important part that I saw, was that they really felt comfortable with each other, because this is where you have the tough conversations. This strategy is working. This strategy is not working for me. My kids did not do well on this assessment. I don't know what's going on. Those are really hard conversations to have. You really have to build that level of trust, and it was so apparent that these teachers all really trusted each other when they were having these conversations. They also have an RTI time built into their schedule. 4 days they meet. This particular team was, they were focusing on math. And so they had an hour and a half block of math, and then a half an hour of RTI time where the kids were divided up. And they went and did their RTI time 4 days a week. And then on the 5th day, they did their common assessment. And then they took those common assessments and looked at them during their team meetings and drove their instruction further from that. So it was really cool to see that all take place. We also had the opportunity to sit in on an actual RTI meeting, and that's the picture you see in the bottom right. That's Jean Brown. She's the principal of Sewell Road. She led the meeting, and in that meeting, the team consisted of the principal, school counselor, school psychologist, reading teacher, and this particular team was the kindergarten team. And they sat there and discussed students who were not reaching their goals at the Tier 1 level during the RTI time. And they discussed whether or not it was social reasons or academic or family life. And it was really, really powerful because these meetings were all student-centered, they were all professional, And it was all based on data, and they sat there, they figured out what the students needed, what tier 2 or tier 3 interventions were needed, and they made those roads available to them. It was really powerful to sit and watch.
And then over at Van Buren Elementary in Baldwinsville, same thing, just piggyback off, they have a great thing happening over there. But they really stress upon my walking in, you're gonna have to sit down for this one, because they stress this is a long process, and it requires changing the building culture in the context of improving student performance. So it was 3 years ago, they were all placed on teams, all stakeholders in the building, including special areas, teaching assistants. So that first year, 3 years ago, they had to create their own time before school, after school, and of course, you know, you have your negative, this isn't gonna work, it's a waste of my time, and now they have built into the master schedule 1 hour a week, grade level teams meet uninterrupted time, K through 5. All of them are running PLCs and RTI consistently. And their RTI time though, they haven't gotten to the math piece, they're focused on reading at this point. They do not have enough math specialists to get that up and running consistently, but the reading is consistent. Each grade level has a 90-minute block of uninterrupted ELA. In the last 30 minutes of that 90 block, that's when the RTI interventions take place. And then, so you say each kid gets 30 minutes of reading interventions daily for a total of 150 minutes a week. It was also noted last year, Van Buren was the only elementary building out of 5 buildings in Baldwinsville that their 3-5 ELA scores went up.
So we thought it would be a good idea to review what RTI is. Our research has led us to determine that the following components are essential for RTI to be successful. First, the PLCs, having time built into our schedule for teams to meet. Second, focused instructional strategy, which focuses on tier 1 instruction and or good teaching for all students. Next is using data effectively to drive instruction. And differentiated instruction, or DI, focuses on tier 1 and are we meeting the needs of all students.
And to further look into the components of RTI, also the fact that building culture of collective responsibility, and that's where that all-in mentality comes in. Building and district level supports to help with the collaboration of those data teams. And also common assessments, which are essential to have that data-driven instruction take place. And finally, communication with parents. We'd also like to have with teachers and with students, that this transparency is where we can build that culture of all in and everybody's in for purpose. All of these components together stand under the RTI umbrella. And with all of these in mind, there are some things that we can do right now, starting this school year and this summer, to help advance our movement within this process. Number 1 is exposure. So we already have some things in place within our district. We utilize a weekly star that comes out to all of us throughout the district. We have some things on Facebook and on Twitter. We'd like to really highlight the buildings that are already focusing on RTI and that are already doing really good things. We've got pictures of those data walls. We've got things going on in every building. And if we really highlight them and let it be known that this is a culture that is building and growing, this is more the norm of teaching rather than the outcast, that we really want to expose that. Number 2 are STLE leaders. We have several teachers already leading the way and bringing about changes in differentiated instruction, RTI, PLCs, and assessments. So we need to really use these people to coordinate the efforts and maintain the momentum. And within that, also getting out the word of what these focus groups are doing and spreading it further than just these groups. This June, there is an STLE open house showcasing the work of these groups, and we'd like to really, really get that out there and advertise and invite people from our district to really come and be a part of that and see that so that we can grow from there. In addition, this August, right here in Syracuse, the PLC Summit, PLC at Work Summit that Sarah and I attended is coming here to Syracuse. And our district is lucky enough to have 100 people be able to go to. Well, we really want to encourage that we strategically allocate those 100 slots, and that we use teachers and administrators who are ready to take on leadership roles and establish PLCs within the district. This is a chance to have more people see and listen to Mike Mattis and the DeBoers in person. And once they have been trained, they can be the turnkey trainers in their respective buildings. And finally, the common curriculum. Our district really needs to focus on creating a common curriculum in every grade level in all areas. But first, we have a few game changers for North Syracuse. In other words, none of this can happen without these prerequisites. As discussed in our last issue analysis, our schedule must change in order to allow for collaborative planning time during the day. Currently, our schedule is on a block, and it needs to change to a more hybrid or traditional, so in order to open up those collaborative opportunities. North Syracuse must also clearly create defined criteria for AIS services. We are too inconsistent throughout our district. Interventionists and specialists need to be placed in buildings according to need, not based on number of students in the building, but rather how many students need support.
We chose to create a linear step process for implementation for two reasons. The first is that we discovered there are so many inconsistencies across our district. So having one clearly laid out process will help our district to have the same components in place at every building. The second reason we chose to have a linear step process was to acknowledge the good work that is already being done. A building like Cicero Elementary can move to the step that is appropriate to where they are in the process, rather than having to start over. We took their good work and the things that they have learned from the process and put them into our steps as we created them. Step one, we feel it is first and foremost essential for established teams to be created. We saw this happen at Webster. We saw it they were administratively chosen. Administrators told people what team they were on and assigned all of those all-in people, the TAs, the special area people, to a PLC. We also would like it to be at the grade level or department meeting, area wherever possible. But the area of focus must be based on data, but is chosen by the PLC. We feel that that's powerful. When teachers have a choice in what they're working on, we feel that they will have that all-in mentality and want to continue working on it if they feel that they have a choice. Step two involves establishing norms. We love the book Learning by Doing by DeFore and DeFore. They've already done the research. They're professionals in that area. And we recommend that we follow, for North Syracuse, these meeting norms, which are common, and they're also already in place at Cicero. All of these things were things that those teachers found to be useful in efficiently using their time as a PLC. Melissa's going to continue with the process.
Step three, after the teams have established their norms, and each building will have different norms and each team will have different norms, but once those are established, the teams will then sit down and create SMART goals. And we all know SMART goals now, thanks to our PLPs and SLOs and all that stuff, but to go over, they are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And these goals will be based on data and agreed to as part of their team. And then the leaders will collect those goals and turn them into the administrator, whomever is in charge of their group. Step four is to create common assessments based on your goal. And the team will get together, they will create those common assessments, and then they will give those assessments to their students. And step five, this is where the hard part comes in. Step five is when you administer your assessments, and then you get together and you look at those assessments. And you have to sit there and be honest and say, kids didn't do so well, I'm not really sure what's going on in my classroom, but we may need to make some changes. And those are really difficult conversations, which is why, as we said before, we really need to create a safe environment and a culture of all in, and we're all going to be in this together. Once that is done, then they can make those intervention times and decide where the students are going to go, whether they need interventions, enrichment, remediation, whatever they may need based on those assessments. Here you'll see, this is just a timeline, and as you look through step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, this would be for a building like the junior high school or the high school who don't have PLCs going on, really don't know what RTI is, so there's going to be a lot of training involved. So the steps would be pretty spread out. But if you have a team like Cicero Elementary who already is, at least half, if not 3/4 of the way through this process, that timetable would obviously change. So it's going to be a differentiated model depending on where your building is.
So just looking ahead into the future, we came up with 4 recommendations for the district. It's a commitment of 3 to 5 years. This is some hard, tough work, as we just explained earlier. It's not going to happen overnight. We're aware that buildings are at various stages in implementing PLCs and RTI and using data to drive instruction. And as we pointed out, we have Cicero L, who is up and running, and then we go to the other extreme where we have some other buildings that haven't probably even thought about much. So we recommend using available resources. Our Chris Klebeck right here at BOCES, and he did tell us, he didn't give us specific districts, say yes, right here in Onondaga County, I've been training local districts and establishing PLCs and moving into the RTI model. And I know we are currently in communication with Solution Tree to provide the district with some hybrid training and differentiated models based on building readiness. The second thing that we recognize is we need to do some serious work on improving our Tier 1 instruments. We recommend intensive professional development and differentiated instruction, especially for our secondary levels. And we also need to continue to support the use of our SRI and SMIs, those are scholastic reading and math inventories, and Ames Web to naturally differentiate, but people need to be appropriately trained to read that data and to further use that data to drive instruction. Thirdly, our district needs to utilize our current teacher leaders as turnkey trainers for the rest of the staff in the district, and perhaps maybe putting some teachers on special assignment to roll out PLCs, RTI, and using data to drive instruction. And these teachers can work, again, with BOCES, attend the Solution Tree in August, and to establish a protocol and procedures that is consistent throughout the district to, again, go back to the building leaders, train them, and train the teacher leaders, and then those teachers can turn and train the teachers within the PLCs. And lastly, we need to look into investing in the use of instructional coaches to assist and support teachers in this effort moving forward. We're one of the few districts in this area that we do not have instructional coaches or teachers on special assignment to help us.
So this is the question we asked ourselves as we delved into the research. Are we meeting the needs of all students in every classroom, at every grade level, in every building throughout our district? It is the driving question as we implement RTI at all levels in our district. We will know success when we can answer yes to each part. And so we leave you with a clip from Mike Matos, the guru of RTI. We are inspired by his words.
RTI is not a new way to qualify kids for special ed, and it's not an elementary reading program. And I see that all over the country right now. It's a new way to qualify kids for special ed. No, it's not. The RTI research didn't even start around special needs kids. You want to know where the RTI research started from? People asking a question. The question was, what do we got to do to make sure every kid succeeds in school? That's where the research came from. This isn't a special ed law. It's an every kid law. It's about providing kids what morally they deserve. That's what we're talking about.
Thank you so much.
Secondary.
It was secondary.
Yeah, we didn't do it at the elementary level.
Elementary didn't really need it. They're pretty far along and they know PLCs, they know
Yeah.
RTI, you know.
However, they're at all different places in their
They're
buildings.
all over the board, right, but they at least know what it is where,
Yeah, they could benefit from a consistent protocol.
And when we chose those video clips, we were careful to choose a smattering. So we didn't show you all the ones of everybody that knew it or didn't know it. It was a really nice cross-section of the information that we gathered.
What do you think the breakdown is? Because I work in Liverpool, and it's I mean, we were talking on elementary, I mean, it's just embedded.
right,
Middle school and high school, it's like, they're like, what are you talking about?
don't even know what it is.
know what the acronyms are?
Right.
No.
So what do you think, I mean, what's the breakdown? Like, where does it even?
I think in our district, the biggest problem is our schedule. Our schedule does not allow for collaboration to take place, for RTI to take place. Because of the block schedule, we're not even placed on teams. At the middle school, they are somewhat put on teams, but junior high and high school, we're not on
I'm a
teams at
co-teacher,
all.
I don't even have common plan.
It's funny, we in middle school in Liverpool, and we're on teams. And we actually have common planning time, but we do meet, and we do discuss students, but not to the same level.
But imagine how powerful those meetings would be if you could do something like that.
Correct, but it's not, for me to be more effective, like science, to meet with the other seventh grade science teachers and compare assessments.
Right. So in our last, were you at our last presentation? Okay, so part of that, the built-in collaboration time was to meet interdisciplinary and disciplinary. So you get that science time and team time to talk
We have
about that.
interdisciplinary, we do not have disciplinary.
Okay.
And that's where with
You
getting
need both.
started also, having an administration and building support to help guide the discussion so that it's not just, a couple teachers trying to push something onto other teachers. And sometimes people get scared of the word RTI. In fact, we've had several experts say, just take that right out and just say, what are you doing for your kids? And will show me the data of what's working and what's not, and what are we doing if kids are proficient or aren't proficient. So it's really just setting up that the guideline and protocol. Again, it's
Initiating those conversations instead of taking care of housekeeping.
I do think schedule, I mean, because year
Yeah.
one for us, we literally threw our normal schedule out the window,
Yeah.
and it was so uncomfortable. I mean, people were sitting at a staff meeting and fighting for their normal time that they usually go to special area, their normal time, they usually do lunch, and it was really, it took us, I would say almost 3 months to figure out a schedule where
Sure.
RTI could even be built in for
Right.
everyone.
So did you notice any differences within the teachers that were looking for their planning and their time? Did you notice any turnaround once?
Well, we're
Got
at
it,
now,
got
so,
it.
yeah.
So what do you
we're-
notice now?
It's huge, I mean, and it's just the norm now, so it's not, I don't even think, staff's also changed and things like that, but it certainly is the norm now.
I think that I was an elementary teacher at a K-4 building, and I went to a middle school, and so I feel like I had a little bit of perspective, and I think that elementary teachers, and me included, because I still find this is a problem at the middle school, we're very possessive of our kids. Like, I want to be the best teacher I could be for those kids, and when I went to 5th grade, and I was like, I felt like I was doing some things that were a little bit different than some other people, like, push my desk together, and they were doing, I was more elementary, and I actually had people say to me, that's kind of elementary thinking, and I just wonder if you said that it's in place at your level, like, wouldn't that be great to be the trainers to go, we were the naysayers, we didn't think it would work to go to the next level, because I feel like I've seen both, and I think it can work at my middle school, but again, it has to be more than just, a small group of people trying to bring it about.
Judy leaned over to me when you were asking that question about why isn't it working, at the secondaries, and she said, too many teachers, too many kids on their rosters. And I was a high school biology teacher in a previous life, and I had 150 kids. I did not know those 150 kids as well as I would know 30 kids or 25 kids by any means. And they're coming in and they're going out. It's just, I don't know, it's almost too much.
But it's working. It's working in other districts. I mean, it's not working in Woodstock.
Yeah.
That's a high school.
I'm giving you the reason I think it's a little more.
It is challenging, right, but Mike Mattis and the DeFores all have evidence of it working within the just as well. It's just the fact of taking that first step in establishing it.
And that's
And
culture piece.
Culture.
Yeah, because we walked away from Webster and we were kind of like, we can't even get anything started because we have to change our culture and our mentality that we're all here for the same purpose.
You know, it's Webster as big as your district?
Yes.
And they are.
There's just like a
But they have
That's
two,
why I
they
always think
split
that. I
after
think
they
it's hard to do
recently.
things
See,
in
we
your
use
district
that as an
often.
excuse way too often.
Yes.
And if you worked in our district, it's like, well, we're too big, we can't. It's like, oh,
They do have their 2 high schools though, so we have.
Yeah,
one
they just
as well.
split recently.
Well, I mean, it helps with the culture.
Right.
For sure.
I mean, we have a PLC, I know, that's going pretty successfully up at the high school with global studies teachers. But that's an instructional PLC.
Right.
It is not about learning. It is about what they're teaching.
Right,
So-
it's strategies, they're doing strategies.
And that's a whole cultural shift.
Did you have a question?
Well, I was just wondering, one of the other challenges too is that when students get to high school, they have so much more choice in their own schedule. That they're taking different levels of courses, that they're taking different elective courses, and there are fewer opportunities. They don't have common teachers as much anymore. You know, I'm on an 8th grade team and we see all the same kids.
Well, at the high school level, though, it would be more, rather than teaming interdisciplinary, it'd be more disciplinary. So if I were teaching social studies, I would, and she was teaching science, she would sit with science and look at those assessments and drive those assessments. I would do social studies, even though we may share the same kids on the same team. You know, my group would be focused on social studies.
And they said at
So just
Webster that was
disciplinary.
one of the
Yes.
reasons why the algebra teachers got together and formed common assessments, because they were looking at their data and what was successful in one classroom might not be successful in another, but to open that door and say, hey, what are we doing, so that we're all doing the same thing no matter which teacher you go to. We're going to be doing the same thing. So if Sue stays after school for help with Kelly, then she's going to be doing the same thing she would do in my classroom.
And the common assessments are based around their priority standards.
Need to know
common
standards,
standards.
essentials.
Yeah.
And those come up within the PLC, within the team meetings.
At our high school in Phoenix, we've lost almost about 350 kids since I started 5 years ago. And as people have retired, we haven't replaced the positions, but we still have a lot of undersubscribed teachers at our high school. And we decided, well, this is our golden opportunity in order to use them. Now, it's not a true RTI, but we have a content area study hall during each of our blocks. So in other words, you have ELA, math, science, and social studies. And we may not do that content, like the science teacher, maybe chemistry is only available at a certain time, but there are other people that could help the kids. And the teachers will give, other kids will give a list. These kids need to be in your structured study hall for this, especially now that we're coming up on Regents with lab time. Yeah, this is a way for them to kind of get their lab time in. But it's not a true RTI, but it has worked, and I don't have to lay off people and make them 28 high school teachers.
And it's funny because from there, the concept might even extend to a more true RTI. And the recommendation to that, the RTI word is tainted by a different way. You're doing it already, you're starting it, you're establishing it, go with it.
And interesting what you said, we saw at Thomas High School, based on data, they ran their data, kids were having difficulty, and the week we went, they had just instituted a writing lab where they had thought outside the box, and based on their data, they said, we need to provide time. So every Friday, there's going to be help for kids that we're working on, the APs especially, even though, they have all supports, but they felt like that was one that was missing. And so they had just put that in place and to advertise that there was a need, just like you found, there was a need, and this is where the kids could go to get that need met. And also math lab, they had a math lab, the same thing, that was their one focus, and they had it throughout the day so that when kids had a free period, they could leave and go get help from another teacher with something specific. So.
I was thinking that I was just answering my own question, but because in elementary school we benchmark all kids using like Ames Web, or you're really looking apples to apples all the time, because the kids, and then once you hit the middle school, we were just saying, they don't have that same, she's like, I wish we kind of had that, because she said they come up with the IEP with their SRI level and their Ames Web data and all those